Welcome to this exciting course where you will learn to build a Wikipedia scale search engine completely from scratch using Python. Other than Python, we are going to be using Gensim and Flask. Before we dive into the how, let me first show you what you will build by the end of this course. So, this is section 1, which is introduction and demo. In this section, we are only going to have this one video where we are going to look at the course preview and final app demo. So, let me take you to this Flask web server which is running this particular application. Now, this app, as the name suggests, allow us to search anything from the 200k articles. So let's do a quick demo. On your screen, you are seeing the final working app, a clean and lightweight web-based Wikipedia search engine trained on 200k real Wikipedia articles. Let's type something like Einstein theory. And we can clearly see we have results popping up. So we get a list of search results, snippets from real Wikipedia articles that are most relevant to the query. Notice here, we don't display the entire Wikipedia article, but only the first few characters of it. That was by design. You can implement it however you wish. So how does this work under the hood? It uses TF-IDF vectorization to convert each article into a mathematical representation. Then using Gensim's similarity index, it calculates how similar a user's query is to each of the 200k articles. The app returns the top 50 results paginated using an AJAX call. The backend is built using Flask and the front end is styled using Bootstrap. What's even more exciting is this entire app is just around 100 lines of code logic. No heavy frameworks, no complicated search engines, just pure Python magic and practical skills you can reuse anywhere. By the end of this course, you won't just understand the theory behind search, you will actually build this end-to-end project yourself, from downloading the data, processing it, building the index and deploying this slick front-end interface. Let's get started and build this step by step. See you in the next video. Before we start building our search engine, let's take a quick moment to understand what search actually means. I know it sounds obvious, you type something and you get results. But under the hood, search is a fascinating blend of language, mathematics and clever indexing. At its core, search is the task of retrieving relevant information from a large collection of documents based on a user's query. Okay? Think of it as looking for a needle in a haystack. But here, the needle might be fuzzy, the haystack might be huge, and the word needle might actually mean pointy thing used for sewing. That's why search is not just about finding exact matches, it's about relevance. Imagine you are in a giant library with 200k books, which is close to what we will be dealing with. Now, sometimes someone walks in and says, I want information about the moon landing. How do you decide which books to hand them? You probably won't just look for books titled Moon Landing. You might consider books that mention Apollo, NASA, 1969, or even Neil Armstrong. That's what intelligent search is all about, going beyond keywords. Now let's break it down. There are several types of search engines and they differ based on how they understand the query and the document. And we can have different types of search. We can have tag-based search with no sorting. We can have tag-based search with sorting. We can have keyword search, which is essentially looking for exact match. We can have keyword search with sorting based on the relevance and rarity of word included in the query within the corpus. Then we can have semantic search. We can have vector search. Now let's look at these searches one by one. Keyword search, this is the most basic form. It checks, does the document contain this word? If yes, show it. Simple. TF-IDF based search, which is essentially a statistical based matching. This is what we will use. TF-IDF stands for term frequency inverse document frequency. It doesn't just look for the presence of a word, but how important that word is in the document relative to the whole collection of documents. Here, a document means one Wikipedia article and collection of document means all the Wikipedia articles. So a word like the appears in every document and carries almost no weight, while a word like moon might be rare and very informative. Then we have got semantic search, which is meaning based matching. These are more advanced models that try to understand the meaning behind words, like using BERT or other language models, but they are heavier, slower and less interpretable, which is why for many practical applications, TF-IDF is still an excellent middle ground. So why TF-IDF? So for this course, we will build a search engine using TF-IDF. It strikes a great balance between speed, simplicity and relevance. You will be amazed at how effective it is, even with simple math and no deep learning. But before we jump into building actual engine, we need something important, and that is data. In the next video, we will talk about where to get large scale text data and what kind of formats work best for building search systems. See you there. So, where does the data come from? Before you can build any search engine, you need something to search in. That's right, the data. Whether it's a blog search, a legal document search, or even a product search engine, everything begins with the data you have. Imagine building Google, but you don't have any web pages, or building Amazon search, but you don't have any product listings. Your search system is only as good as the data you feed into it. That's why in this video, we'll talk about where search data usually comes from. So, here are typical sources of data for search engines. APIs. Many services expose content via APIs. For example, a news search engine might pull in articles from a news API. Then we have got raw text dumps. If you already have a product or blog platform, your data might live in a MySQL or MongoDB databases. So we will be using a Wikipedia text dump of 200k articles, but you are not limited to 200k articles. If you want to replicate all these steps that we are going to learn in this particular course to your large data of say 1 million, 10 million or even 100 million articles, then if your system is powerful enough, you are good to go, right? Then we have got web scraping. Web scraping, sometimes you extract data directly from websites. This is common when no API is available. Then we have got databases. We already covered kind of this database. Whenever you have MySQL or something like MongoDB database, then you can go for databases. Now some datasets are static, like a one-time export of data Wikipedia articles. Others are dynamic, like customer reviews constantly being added to a product page. Depending on the nature of your data, you will decide whether to retrain the search index periodically or keep it static. This is a very important call that you need to take. In this particular course, we are going to assume that our Wikipedia is dump is contains of 200k articles and it remains static for a while. Okay, but it's just a matter of retraining the entire index and entire procedure that we will be discussing. What if you already have a database? If you already have a database, say a collection of customer support tickets, blog posts, forum threads, you can extract the relevant fields like title and the body and treat them as documents. From there, you pre-process and feed them into the same pipeline we will be building. Okay, so what I'm essentially trying to say is, if you have got any data, any text data, you just extract it and treat entire remaining steps as we will be doing in this course. So what we will use in this course? From this course, we are using a clean, ready to use dump of 200k Wikipedia articles from Hugging Face, which we are going to see in the next video how we can get access of. This lets us focus more on building the actual search engine and less on data cleanup. But keep in mind, the steps we follow will work with your own data as well. So whether your document comes from a database, a CSV, an API, or even scraped content, the pipeline stays mostly the same. Pre-process, index, search. In the next video, we will download our Wikipedia data and get started. Hello everyone, welcome to section 3, in which we are going to go over the download and pre-processing of the Wikipedia data. So let's get started with video 4, where it will be a more of a hands-on video, where in this video I want to just download these articles from Hugging Face. So let me open a new tab and let me open this link, which is called huggingface.co/dataset/Wikipedia. If I hit enter, this dataset got many different dumps of the entire Wikipedia. Okay, now in the English we have got maybe a dataset worth of GBs. Okay, and then we have got a simple version of English, which is much simpler to deal with. So we have got one original one which contains about 6 million articles, and we have got a simple one which contains 200k articles. Now what I will do is I will go to files and versions here, and in here if I click on the data, we see these various files, and if I click on the simple, I should be able to download the Parquet file. Let me click on the simple, and I have got this Parquet file which is of 130 megabyte. And if you, let's say, want to work with the original English file, this particular file will contain many chunk of files, since it is easier to work with chunks rather than getting one massive file, because that will be very hard to load all at once in RAM. So they have splitted that entire file into multiple chunks. So I will go to the simple folder and I'll load this data. So I'll just click on it and I'll download it. And to download, where I'm going to download it, I've created this this Wikipedia search course folder, where I'm going to store this as Wikipedia simple dump, and maybe write 200k to it. Okay, so once this is downloaded, what we are going to do is, so essentially the idea is that once I have the articles downloaded, next I will be looking at how can I potentially pre-process these articles. Okay, so I'll see you in the next video. Till then, bye bye. Hello everyone, welcome to the video 5, where we are going to be loading the data that we downloaded in the last class, and we will be looking at how do we process the data. So let me open the directory where I saved the data, which was Wikipedia search engine. Within here, I'll open command prompt, and let me zoom in a little bit. And in this command prompt, what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly create a simple virtual environment using the inbuilt package called venv, and I'll call this virtual environment as simple search, or maybe TF-IDF search. Okay, so it will take a few seconds. Notice this has created a environment folder here. Once this is ready, what we can do is we can activate the environment and we can get started with the coding process. So what I will do now is I will quickly download a few first of all, let me activate the environment. TF-IDF scripts activate, and after activating the environment, what I'll do next is I will install a bunch of packages. So I'll install pandas for reading the data file that we just downloaded. We use Gensim to basically train the models, and we also need Jupyter Notebook, or maybe I'll probably install Jupyter Notebook separately. So it is installing it. and I'll just resume the video once it has successfully installed. So both of those packages have been installed, and now let me install Jupyter Notebook, maybe Jupyter, and I think I should be having, one second, pip install Jupyter. I should already be having that, but it is, I guess, updating it. Let it install for some time. Okay, so the Jupyter has already been installed. So now what we can do is we can open Jupyter Notebook. So you are free to code whatever way you like. I will be building the model using Jupyter and then saving it using Jupyter. And then after we have the model built, then we will be using Visual Studio Code to build the Flask app. Okay, so let's open Jupyter Notebook. Jupyter Notebook, and it should open our Google Chrome in this folder. So now that we have Jupyter Notebook opened, I'll create a simple notebook. Let me create a simple notebook to basically build, train and save model. So this file will hold all our logic for training and saving the models. So now let's quickly let me increase the cell size a bit. Import pandas as PD. I want to load this dump of Parquet file. So I'll say data pd dot read Parquet, and let's name the Wikipedia dump. And if I reload it, it's saying PyArrow is not found. So let's install PyArrow really quickly, or maybe I think I can install it from here as well. Pip install PyArrow. Okay, so once our PyArrow has been installed, let's rerun it. And I think this should now solve the issue. Okay, so we have the data ready. So let's look at the data. So now this data has got ID, the document ID, the URL, and finally the text. Text is the field that we are interested in. So what I'll do is I'll create a new list called raw documents. Raw documents. And this raw document will be a list of all the documents that we have got. Okay, so here what I'll do is I'll load my text field and I'll load them as to list. So once I have this, let me check the raw documents length. So you can see it's 205k. Now let's look at the raw document number 1. So you can see it's a long document. It's a long Wikipedia document, right? And it's about what? It's about the April month. I guess it's alphabetically stored within this. Now, what was the scope of this video? The scope of this video was to choose the right pre-processing strategy. See, pre-processing is a huge topic, right? There are many things which are involved in deciding how best we should do pre-processing, like removing stop words, tokenizing and things like that. But here, what we will do is we will just do, or rather I would say create a function which will do the cleaning. And essentially what we want to do is we want to basically for each document. So raw document, this raw documents is essentially known as corpus in the NLP field. This corpus is a collection of documents. Each document must be transformed into words. Okay, and those words can also be called as tokens. Now, how do we convert those? That's the pre-processing step. So what I'll do is I'll create a function. Now, to be able to create that function, I need to load some stop words and also word tokenization. Now NLTK package offers a method, simple method. We only be using NLTK here at the pre-processing step. We won't be using anywhere else this particular package. So let's do one thing. I guess I need to install it. So I'll do pip install NLTK. And once this is installed, I would like to import from NLTK corpus stop words and also from NLTK dot tokenize import word tokenize. So these functions would be required. So let's delete these cells where we are installing something. Now I can define, let's rerun this. I can define a stop words list, which will be stop words dot words and the language which we have is English. And I can create a set of these stop words. Once I have the stop words ready, I would like to create a function for tokenizing. So I'll say tokenize and clean. And this particular function is going to take a document string and it will return a list of words for that. So it will basically return, so I'll use list comprehension for word in. Now I'll call word tokenize of NLTK. I'll call it on document and then I'll check if w.lower not in stop words, which we have defined here. So I want to check if w.lower is not in stop words and also if w dot is alpha, which means I want to only consider alphanumeric words. Then only I consider that as a token. So if I run this and let's do one thing, let's take our tokenize clean function and let's take our raw documents and call it on first document. If I call it on first document, you can clearly see we have got a clean list of words, and I think it makes sense to get a lowercase version. Okay, so that so we can see now we have got a lowercase version. So I can delete this cell. Now what we are going to do in the next video is we are going to convert the entire corpus into this kind of representation. Hello everyone. So in this particular video, we are going to take our function that we created in the last lecture and basically run that function on all the documents that we have got. Okay. So we have got 200k documents and running this function on 200k documents is not going to be a quick task. So what I am going to do is I am going to create a function, basically cleaned or rather I should say cleaned corpus. I would say cleaned corpus, and it will be an empty list. So for each, so what I'll do is for each document in raw document, I'll call tokenize clean and I'll call it on doc, and this whole thing should be appended to what? To cleaned corpus. Now let's run it for only maybe first 100 articles first, just to see. If I run this, one second. Oh, okay. So cleaned corpus dot append. So if I run this, it's done. Now we have got cleaned corpus. Let's check the length. So we have got 100 documents. Now let's check the first document and we see that we have got correct representation. Now we can run it for all the documents. Now what I'll do is I'll remove this and I'll define a variable, a counter variable, and here I'll say if counter divided by 1000. So every 1000 I want to print the counter so that I can track the progress. So we could have done some advanced stuff here, but I think this would work. counter plus equal to 1. Okay, so now it will keep on printing after every 1000 documents have been pre-processed. If I hit run here, you see 0. Okay, let's wait. So it is taking time, right? So it's taking some time. Now what I'll do is I'll pause this video and I'll resume this video once it is done. Okay, so now we can see that the entire corpus has been transformed into the list of words. So now we have this clean corpus. From next video onwards, we will start looking at how are we going to build models around this. Thank you so much. Hello everyone. So welcome to the section 4, building the search engine backend. Now in this particular section, we are going to take our clean corpus that we have got from the last section, and we are going to start looking at the actual logic of creating the search engine. So let's start with video 7. It's mostly going to be a hands-on creating a GenSim dictionary. What is a GenSim dictionary, or in general, what is a dictionary in NLP? Let's talk about it. One second. Sorry. Yeah. So now what I can do is, one second, something is not working correctly. I think let's get rid of this. Maybe. Okay. So now let's talk about dictionary for a moment. Let's hypothetically assume that my entire corpus consists of these two documents. The first document is Robert, maybe Clive, is a maybe soldier, and then second document is British ruled India for 200 years. Now, if I have to ask you what is a dictionary for this corpus, then you would respond by saying, here dictionary consists of words like Robert, Clive. So essentially what I'm trying to say is all the unique words which are there in my corpus make up the dictionary. Okay, I hope it makes sense. But not only that, a dictionary also uniquely gives a label to each word. So for example, Robert is given the word maybe a label of 0, a ID. Clive is given a label of 1, although we won't be having in our corpus because we have removed all the stop words, but for the sake of it, this would be 2, and so on. So essentially, dictionary is a collection of all the unique words in our corpus plus a uniquely identified ID which is given to that dictionary. So let's see how we can create a dictionary using GenSim. So we can import from GenSim dot corpora import dictionary, I guess. So now that we have this imported, what we can do is we can load this dictionary class and we can create a dictionary here. So maybe dictionary 1, maybe something like that. Now in this dictionary, I can pass this cleaned corpus. Okay, if I pass it here and if I run this, it will take some time because this particular list of corpus would have so many documents and so many different words. It would take some time to process all those words and create a token to ID kind of representation. Okay, so it's completed. Now can we print it? Obviously it won't be printed. What can we do with it? I can call a method called token to ID. It's called token to ID, and if I run it, you see this abdicates has been given 0 ID. And there are so many words, so many unique words, right? Now let's get rid of this cell or rather check the length of this dictionary. Length of dictionary 1. So we can see this entire corpus has got about 507k unique words, right? So this is huge. Okay, so I hope it makes sense. I hope the entire content made sense. So this is what I wanted to discuss in this video, that how do we create this dictionary. In the next video, I'll be talking about creating a bag of words representation. See you there. Thank you. Hi everyone. So now that we have created a dictionary from our cleaned list of words or tokens, we are ready to build a bag of words corpus. Now what is bag of words? Let's look at that really quickly. So bag of words is a name of representing my document. Let me give you one example here. So I already have a dictionary, right? And I can call it by IDs, right? So let's create a word. Let's create a document. Maybe something like April month. I have removed is because I am trying to replicate it just like my real documents would be. April month, century maybe, or let me repeat month again, April again, April one more time, maybe history, April, month, and so on. So this is my example document. Now what is a bag of word representation? See, first of all, you have to understand that the computer wants this document in a form of numerical format, right? So what can we do about it? I can look at, so first of all, let me remove this April A capital as this. Okay, now how can I get a bag of words representation of this? Let's try to do it manually. Let me check dictionary and let me check what is the ID of April. I think I can't get, maybe let's see, dictionary one dot get April. Oh, I think okay, one second. Oh, I see. I think I need to call the token to ID first, and then yeah. So what I've done is I've extracted token to ID and then called get. So now I see April has a 27 ID. So what I'll do, I'll create a tuple called 27, comma, I'll count all the occurrences of April, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'll write 4 here. I'll create one more tuple, this time for month. Now month, let's see how many, what is the ID of month. So month is having ID of 438, and let's count how many times month appears, 2, 3. And similarly, century, let's try to do it for century. So we can see century does not exist. So we don't need to do anything about it. Month has been covered. History, let's try to do it for history. 311. And history appears only one time. 311, comma 1. This is what we call as BAGO. So we wrap it around a list. And what I'll do is I'll call example doc underscore BOW. So this example doc is in the form of text, and what we will do is, first of all, we will get example doc words, which will be tokenize, clean, and example doc. So now if I check my example doc words, we can see this has been tokenized and converted into this, right? Now I have converted example doc bow, but this has been done manually. How to do it automatically? So there is a method on a dictionary called doc to bow, document to bow, and let me call example doc words on it. And if you notice here, my doc to bow that I created manually is exactly same as this doc to bow, right? So that's why I created this doc to bow manually, to show you how it's created, and then I called the method that actually converts this into a doc2wow using Gensim. So what I'll do is, now the purpose of this video was to create a bag of words corpus. So what I'll do is I'll create bag of word corpus, and it's as simple as calling this method on my cleaned list. What was the cleaned list? Where is my cleaned list of words? So this is my cleaned corpus, and so it will go through all the documents, and it will, I think it is going to, one second, let me check the length of, so this is having 205 documents. One second. So this, okay, I think this takes a document at a time, but I need to convert it for all the corpus. So what I'll do is I'll wrap it up in a list. So I'll say for doc in cleaned corpus, and I'll pass doc here. And if I run this, now it will take some time, and it will convert all the documents, all the cleaned corpuses documents into a bag of word corpus representation. It will take some time. Let me pause this video and let's resume it. Okay, so we have got bag of word corpus ready. So now I can check the bag of word corpus for the first document. Obviously my example was a very small document, right? This was a very small document, but for a Wikipedia article there will be lot of words, and that is why there will be lot of token ID and word counts pair, right? So these are word counts, and these are token ID from the dictionary. So now that we have this bag of word corpus ready, now I want to show you how we can convert this into a TF-IDF corpus in the next video. Thank you so much. Hello everyone. So in this video, we want to take our bag of word corpus and transform it into TF-IDF corpus. See, these different level of corpuses that we are going to see, these are just different kind of transformations. Initially, we had raw documents, we transformed it into clean documents. Then we transformed it into bag of word representation, and now we are talking about transforming it into TF-IDF based transformation. And each transformation is trying to basically represent document in a more sensible and more semantically strong manner. Okay, so what is TF-IDF? See, TF-IDF is made up of two words: term frequency, which stands for TF, and then IDF, which is inverse document frequency, right? So term frequency you don't need to worry about. Why? Because essentially BOW corpus captured that, right? We only want to talk about inverse document frequency. Now inverse document frequency, basically what it means is, it takes each word in the corpus and it gives it a score, and that score is essentially, so okay, so the idea is, let's say I have a word called atom in my document. Now atom has a term frequency. Term frequency would mean how many times this atom appears in the document. Suppose it appears 23 times. And now I want to multiply it with IDF of atom. Now what is IDF of atom? IDF of atom would mean how rare or how common this word atom is throughout the corpus. Now understand this. We are looking at within a document. Within a document I am looking at counts, right? So within a document I want to look at the count of atom. Now across the document, that is entire corpus, I am looking at IDF, which basically penalizes. You can say, suppose I have got 23. Now 23 is high, right? High word count. Suppose this atom is very rare, means it only appears in selective documents. What does that mean? That means this is a very important word. If a word which appears in all the document in my corpus, all the 200k documents that we are dealing with, that would mean this word is not important. In that case, IDF would be something like 0. which would make this multiplication as 0. So in general, TF-IDF would become 0, right? But in the case of a rare word, it would be closer to 1, which would make atom the TF-IDF value of atom. So I'll write it as TF-IDF of atom is equal to term frequency of atom into IDF of atom. Okay, so I hope it makes sense, right? Now how do we compute this? We have already got the bow corpus. Now what I'll do is I'll import from Gensim TF-IDF model, or I guess from gensim.models, I would say TF-IDF model. So I'll define TF-IDF, and this TF-IDF takes the entire corpus itself, and this should be a bow corpus. And if I run this, it will obviously take some time. And now what I can do is, so let me do one thing. Let me first of all print the first document in my corpus. If I pass within the TF-IDF first document, what it will do is it will transform this document into a bow representation. You see, the keys will be same. Keys of each tuple will be same. The only thing that will change is this. So this count has been multiplied by IDF value depending upon. So for example, 27th. Let's look at the 27th. So 27th, you can see 27th word has got a high value, right? All the values are ranging from 0 to 1, but some values are very closer to 1, which means they are very important word for that particular document. So this word is very important. Let's look at or. Now this will not be always true that a higher frequency, higher bag of word value would imply that higher TF-IDF value is there. And it will happen only those cases where a word is very common throughout the documents. Okay, so look at this word 57. Let's see 57. Okay, so you can see this document has relatively high count, but it is very unimportant, which would mean, let's look at this word. Which is this word? Let's look at, we have got our dictionary dot token to ID dot get, maybe I think it would be a reverse thing, right? Token to ID. I want to get ID to token, right? ID to token. Yeah. ID to token get 27. Okay, 27 is April. Okay. But 57 is what? Becomes. You can see becomes is a very common word. It should have been removed in the stop words in the pre-processing step. But anyway, you can see 57 is getting a very low TF-IDF value, even though its count is high. But for the case of 27, which is April, it's high. The count is word count is high, and also the TF-IDF is high, which would mean this term is very important for the model. Okay, so I hope this small discussion made sense, and now we are ready to do some cool stuff with it. So we are now ready with our TF-IDF value, not TF-IDF value, but rather TF-IDF corpus, TF-IDF model. And so what I can do now is I can create a TF-IDF corpus as well. So this is a TF-IDF model, but I want to create a TF-IDF corpus. So I'll call this entire thing on bow corpus, and it will take some time to execute this. And now once we have this, so we will have a list of, so if I print the first one, it will be a same, and if I check the length of TF-IDF corpus, it will be the same. So now I have TF-IDF corpus. Now I am ready to execute the last step in my entire pipeline to build the entire search stack, and that is similarity matrix. Okay, thank you so much for watching this video. I'll see you in the next video. Hello everyone, welcome to this video 10, where we are going to take our TF-IDF corpus that we had in our last discussion and create a similarity index. Now the question arises that, first of all, what is similarity index and why do we even need it? Okay. Now, what is this TF-IDF corpus? What exactly is the TF-IDF corpus? So we have got, so first of all, check the length. We have got the same number of TF-IDF vectors, which is equal to the number of documents, which means for each document, I have got a representation, right? I have got a representation. So my first document has this kind of representation. So the next question is, suppose I want to find some documents from this. So this is a huge number, right? 200k. This is huge, and I have some sort of document in my mind which I want to search through this corpus. Suppose the document that I want to search has a query. It's called a query, suppose. And I want to search a document which contains maybe title or maybe something like that. Title, sorry, not title, April. Or maybe Einstein, as I showed you in the intro. Einstein invention, something like that. How do I go about doing this? Vaguely, if you know anything about finding stuff, what I want to do is I want to find the vector TF-IDF vector for query as well. Then I want to find which vector, because we in mathematics we can compare distances between vectors. So once I have a vector of query, what I can do is I can check which of these all TF-IDF corpus that we have is closer to the vector of query, and whatever that vector is, I will show it to the user. I hope it makes sense, right? So let me repeat it again. So this TF-IDF corpus has got this many vectors, this many numerical representation. I'll get a vector for my query as well, the document that I want to search. And then what I'll do is I'll compute the similarity of my query vector to all the vector that I have got. And whatever that similarity is, and by similarity I want to check the distance, how closer or far. I want to look at only those vectors which are closer, and I want to maybe return top 10 or top 50, right? So this is the whole idea behind similarity. Now, what is similarity index? So similarity index is a term given by Gensim. So it has got this function. It has got this subclass, which is not subclass, subpackage called similarities, which has got different kind of similarities. We will be looking at sparse similarity. Sparse matrix similarity. Let's run it. So we have got sparse. So now I'll define it as index. I'll call this sparse matrix on what? On a corpus. Now corpus is what? TF-IDF corpus. It is not necessary that you need to pass this. You could have passed BOW corpus. But it would not make sense because BOW corpus is not that strong. So now that we have got this index, okay, I think we need to pass the number of features as well. Number of features would be length of my dictionary. So now, once we have this index ready, what we can do is we can take our query, convert it into a vector, and then compute the so-called similarity. Let's try it out. Let's try it out really quickly. Or let it run. We will try it out in later videos. So for this video, I just wanted to build this index, and that's it. What will this allow me to do? This will allow me to compute similarities. So essentially, if I have a query, what I want to do is I want to okay, let me show you something. So if I have an index, okay, now I can call, maybe let's call it on the first document, okay, and let's run it. You see this? The first one number is 1. Why? Because you have to understand this. Okay, let's first of all check the shape of this. So I have got how many similarities? So let's do one thing. Let me do this in a new cell. Okay, so what I have done is I have called index on the first TF-IDF document. Okay, so what it has done is it has computed the similarity of first document with all other documents. All other documents including itself. The first so the similarity of this document with itself is going to be 1, which means it is perfectly similar. And all other documents have this similarity in less than 1. Like it is 0.2, it is 0.0009. Again, it is very low, right? And how many values we got? We got this many values, which means now I can sort it out. Maybe I can look at which one is larger or which one is smaller. Whichever one is larger, that would give me the most similar document. Let me do one thing. Let me save it in a similarity array, and let's do one thing. Let me call a function called sort, or maybe sorted. I guess sorted I can call. So this sorted it in a reverse order, but I want to, one second, reverse through. Okay, so you see, so now I just don't want to sort this out. So what it has sorted is, it has sorted only the similarity values, not the index. Because how would I know? So I know 1 corresponds to the first document itself, but what about 0.67? What does this corresponds to? 0.65, 0.59, these are high numbers, right? So what does this correspond to? Which document it does corresponds to? For that, we would need to sort it based on the ID itself. Okay. So I hope it makes sense, and I hope what I was trying to tell you about the similarity index in GenSim, it makes sense. And what we can do is, we can probably go ahead and start with the next discussion, or maybe let me show you something. Okay, let me do enumerate. Okay, and then reverse is true, and what we want to do is, maybe we want to define, and let's try it out. Okay, so now we have this kind of, let's define the key also, lambda x1. Okay, so you can see that the first document is again with index 0. Which is this document? Let's look at this. Remember, we saved the raw documents list. Let's copy this index and let's see which document it is this. Because the first document, we know that first document is related to April month. If the score of this document is very high, if the similarity is very high, that means this document also has to be related to April, and it is, right? It is. We can clearly see it. I hope it makes sense, right? So I think that would be it for this video. Now what we can do is, we can go ahead and look at the next video. So thank you so much. Have a nice day. Hello everyone. Welcome to the section 5, in which we will be building the search logic. So far, we are almost close to building the search logic, but we just have to piece together a few things. So in this particular video, we are going to be testing the similarity with a query. So let's head over to the notebook. Now let me write a query. Okay, let me write a query. Say maybe April. Okay, simple query, right? Now I want to search this query among all the, among all the 200k documents that we have. Step 1 would be to tokenize it. So what I'll do is, I'll call my tokenize function on query. If I run it, we get a list, right? That's easy. After this, we already have our dictionary saved, right? Sorry, this dictionary saved, right? Now what I'll do is, I'll take my dictionary and I'll create doc2bow. I'll call doc2bow on it. So we can see 27 and 1. Finally, I'll take my TF-IDF model and I'll call it on this. And we have got this number. So finally, after we have this TF-IDF representation, what we can do is, we can take our index and we can call our TF-IDF on it. So we have got these similarities, right? So we can just save it in similarity. Finally, what we can do is we can get this kind of sorting, and I'll just copy it from here the way we did it here. So we will enumerate it, and by enumerating, what it does is it gives us a iteratable of similarities using its index, and then we reverse true, and then we tell the sorted function that we want to sort it not by the first key in the tuple but by the second key. And if I run it, we can see the most similar document is 111815, and second one is, and third one is, and we can see kind of that this is returning April related documents. But how do we see it visually, right? So we have this index, maybe similarity pairs, something like, I know it's not a very convenient name, but let's get first maybe 20 matches. So these are first 20 matches, and let's loop through it. So I'll do for index for I and score in this. What I'll do is I'll print something like raw documents. I'll get the raw text, and I'll only display maybe first 100 characters, and then I'll display score with score, something like this, right? Okay, so and I think let's display it in one line, and let's only display 50. If I run this, okay, 1 second, what did I forget? Okay, comma. If I run this, notice here, the following is a list of notable deaths in April. Okay, and we can see our search system is working correctly, because with query April we are getting April related and with a very high score. Again, the same article, April is the 4th month of the year. Again, this has got high score. Girls Day is a German. We can't see April appearing in this document, but let's expand this. Maybe beside maybe not just 50 but 100. Okay, now let's look at that girls article again. So Girls Day has, 1 second, is a German of teenage girls. What is Girls Day? Let me look at it. Is it something related to April? But let's look at the maybe index. Let me print the index as well, and let me only print 50 again. And what was the girls? This one. Let's print the raw document full. Okay, yeah, so we can see it's also related to April, and that's why it is being matched with April with a high score. So in this video we have tested a searching logic using the query. In the next video we'll try to do something else to build upon this. I'll see you there. Hello everyone, so welcome to the video 12. In this video we are going to save the important artifacts, important pieces of data and models that we would need to replicate this search process that we saw in the last lecture. So if I just look at this code from here, what are the pieces of information that we would need? Let me open the notepad. So let me ask this question again. So what are the pieces of information I would need to take any query and convert it into a maybe a similarity? Okay, so let's look at one by one. So initially I need to tokenize it. So first I have to save the tokenization process, tokenize function. Okay, second I have to then do this doc2bow. For this I have to save this dict1. Dict1 I have to save, right? Third, then I have to save this TF-IDF model. Okay, I have to save this TF-IDF model. Fourth, then I have to save this index also. So essentially, to produce these similarities, I have to save these pieces of artifacts. Now, am I forgetting anything? Yes, I am. Once I have the similarities, to be able to see the documents, I have to save the raw documents as well. So in fifth step, I'll save raw documents. I hope it makes sense, right? Okay. So these pieces of data we will be saving. Let's look at it one by one. So for tokenize, I don't need to save anything. I just need to separate out this functionality. What I'll do is, I'll copy this and I'll paste it right here, and I'll copy this entire thing and maybe remove this to make sure. I'll just paste it here. So okay, so this is the tokenize function in its entirety. Okay, all right. Next, what else have we got? We have to save dict1. Now dictionary1, how can I save dictionary1? Do I have any method? Yes, it has got a save as text method. Now how can I save it? I can save something like search dictionary.txt, and if I run this, what will happen? Let's see what happens. If I check my directory now, I have got this search dictionary.txt file, which is 8 megabyte file. Okay, so now second step is also done. Now let's save our tf-idf. For this, we can call a gensim tf-idf model dot save, not this, tf-idf dot save, and here I can call my name, maybe model tf-idf dot tf-idf, and if I run this, it should save tf-idf as well. Now let's see. We can see model tf-idf. So it is about 15 megabyte. Okay. So once we have this tf-idf dot save, what else have we got? We have to save index as well. And how can I save index? Let's try to see. Index dot save, and what do we get? Model index dot index. If I run this, and let's see, and if I refresh it, so we have got bunch of files. We have got index file, we have got npy file. These are files which are used by gensim to load the index model, and it is a huge file. It is got 50 megabyte file. Okay, so now we have the index file stored. Now what I can do? I can also store my raw documents. Now how can I store my raw documents? Now there are multiple ways I can do. I can use pickle. So I'll import pickle, import pickle, and now what I can do is, I can maybe do something like pickle dot I guess dump, and inside this dump I can save the raw documents, and I guess I need to enter the file name as well. So I'll just do raw documents dot pickle, raw document dot pkl. I guess it's saying file must be a right attribute. What does that mean? File must, but I think raw documents we can get from, one second, pickle dot, let's look at pickle save python. Oh, I see. I think the only thing that we did here is with open, I'll do raw document dot pickle, and let me write it as pkl, and I'll write it as binary. So write binary as file, and then we can give it as a file reference. So now if I run this, it should save our raw documents as well. Let's look at raw documents.pickle. This is 207 megabyte. Okay, so I think now we are done saving all the 5 things. So what we are going to do is, now this notebook's work has been done. training and saving the model. We will create a new notebook in the next lecture, and we will try to basically not use any existing so we can clearly see that we have these index similarities. We have been using this. Now we will start from fresh, and we will try to load it one by one, okay, in a new notebook. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you. Hello everyone, welcome to this last video in the section 5 where we are building section logic. This video we will be loading the entire thing that we saved in our last section. So let's create a new notebook, and this notebook loading the saved model, saved model artifacts. Okay, so for that I'll simply copy the tokenization as it is. No need to change. If I run this, it should just load. And the next thing that I need to load is dictionary. So for that I'll do from gensim dot corpora import dictionary, and then my dictionary is equal to dictionary dot load from text, and then I can provide the name. Maybe what was the name of my dictionary here? Search dictionary. So I'll say search dictionary dot text, and if I run this now, let's check if we have loaded it correctly or not. Maybe token to ID, and we can clearly see we have got token to ID, and maybe it should have got April here. So maybe let's get ID to token dot get 27. One second, something has not worked correctly, so let me do token to ID. I think something is not worked in our save stage. Save as text, search text. Okay, so now if I do doc to bow, maybe some text, April. Okay, working. It's working. Okay, something I saw something else. Okay, so now my dictionary is working. So now what we need to do is we need to load the TF-IDF. For that I'll do from gensim dot models import TF-IDF model. Now TF-IDF model dot load, and within this I'll say TF-IDF. Not this. What was the name? Model TF-IDF. Model TF-IDF. Model TF-IDF dot TF-IDF. So I'll save it as my TF-IDF. Okay, so once I have that, let's do one thing. My TF, test it out. My TF-IDF, call it on my dictionary, and then my dictionary I'll pass again the April document that I passed, and one second, my dictionary dot doc to bow. Yeah, so we can clearly see it's working. Now after my TF-IDF, I need to open the model index. So to do that, what I'll do is from gensim dot similarities import sparse matrix similarity, and I'll load index sparse matrix similarity dot load index model index dot index, and if I load it, it's working. So now let's test it out by just copying this and pasting it right here. So we have got similarities, and the last step would be to basically load the raw documents themselves. So let's import the pickle module, and with open, now this time instead of write binary, it will be a read binary. And I'll create raw documents is equal to pickle.load, and no need to pass this, just file. And if I run this, our raw document should be loaded. Finally, if I just take my previous code which was doing this similarity thing, and before this, let's calculate similarity pairs by doing sorted, and let's copy it from here only, and let's call it similarities. And if I run this, and if I call similarity pairs, and if I run this, we see that we are getting similar results, right? The following is a list of. So now what we have done is from training to inference. So this is an inference notebook. So I should probably rename it maybe a inference notebook. But that was not the objective of this particular video. The objective was doing this, write the query function. So to write the query function, first of all, let me take all the imports away from this and put it together. Okay, so let's take these and remove it here. Okay, now we have my dictionary. Let's cut it out. Let's also remove these tests that we were doing, and let's remove this as well. And I think I would need this maybe later at the inference function, and then this. So now what I need to do is, and also load this one here. So this loading should happen one time. I don't want my function to load whenever a call happens from my web application. So loading will happen only once, but I'll define a function, and that function I can call probably as generate results. Generate results, and we have got query and maybe to return, and by default we want to return 10 results. So what do we want to do with query? We saw, I'll copy this result here, this code here, and I want to take my query and I want to first of all tokenize it. So tokens is equal to tokenize and clean, and I would like to write query here, and after that replace this April from here. I want to write tokens here. So now I have similarities, similarity pairs, and finally in place of this, I don't want to print anymore. I want to return what? I want to return top documents. I don't want to return even the score. So what I'll do is I'll maybe write something like top docs is equal to this, or maybe I just get rid of this, and similarity pair up to what? Up to 2 return. So however I want to return, I will write top docs dot append raw docs, and in raw docs I don't want to return the entire raw doc because that will be quite huge. I want to return first 100 characters, and finally I want to return the top docs as it is. Okay, so I think generate results is ready. Now let's restart the kernel and clear all outputs and test it out from fresh. Okay, so now let's rerun these cells. Okay, first cell is running. Let's rerun this as well. Let's rerun this opening step. It will take a few seconds. Yeah, done. Now let's generate some results. Let's generate with maybe Robert, and let's return only 10 results. Okay, we can see it's giving us good results. So now generate results with maybe I don't know, Einstein. Okay, Albert Einstein. We can see it is returning something. maybe Earth. Okay, Earth is the third planet, the Earth phase, all planets, blue marble, and so on. We can clearly see our search system is working wonderfully well and it is returning good results. So now the work of notebook is completed. From next lecture onwards, we will start building the actual interface, Flask web app, using the results that we have using the models artifacts that we have just produced. Thank you so much. Have a nice day, and I'll see you in the next video. Hello, everyone. So, welcome to the section 6, and this is going to be the final section. In this section, we are actually going to build the Flask app that we saw in the intro of this course. So, let's get started. Now, in this video 14, I will simply set up the Flask environment. So, to do that, I'll first of all close out all the notebook files that I had because I will not needing them any longer. Now I can close out this one as well. Now let's do one thing. Currently, if I list the directory, there are so many model files and all. Okay. So now what I'll do is I'll create a new directory in this folder called Flask Search App. Okay. CD Flask Search App, and I would like to close my Visual Studio Code, although you are not required to use it. And anything that you feel is something which is going over your head, or maybe you are not equipped with maybe HTML, JavaScript, or CSS, you can feel free to skip it because most of the part we have already studied. What you can do is you can download the code that I will be providing you and just plug your models into that to simulate what I am about to see, what I am about to show you. Okay, so I'll open the code window here. Now I have this folder. Within this folder, I'll open this file called app.py. Let me increase the size a bit, not this much. And now the way Flask apps work is they work by something known as routing, and routing in general is true for all the different kind of web frameworks that are out there. So first of all, let me go here and install the Flask. And once I have that installed, what I can do is from Flask import Flask, and I'll create a app instance Flask, and inside here I'll provide the name, and I'll say if name name equal to main. And let me do one more thing because we would need to create a route, app.route. I'll create a home route which will be called as home. For now, just return hello there. Okay, and so we have this route ready and we need to run it. So I can do something like app.run and debug is equal to true. Okay, so now coming to here, I can run this by doing python app.py. So Flask app is running. Now if I load the app by going to the localhost, we can clearly see hello there is there. Now other than this, what we can do is we can create a templates folder, and inside here I can create index.html, and if I move this hello there here, then what I can do is I can call something known as render template, and I can do index.html. Okay, and here I can import render template, and if I reload the app, we can see the new hello there has been imported. And if I let's say, just to show you, let me copy this code and maybe write some dummy text, dummy, and if I save it and reload it, we can see it's dummy. Okay, so there are so many things that I can cover for this Flask and HTML and all, but I don't want you to worry about this too much. Okay, so what we are going to do is we are going to implement a simple search functionality where user will be having a input where they can enter what they want to search, and it will be loaded from the models and databases that we trained. Okay, so in this video I just wanted to set up this environment, and now that we are good to go, in the next video I'll try to do more stuff with Flask. Thank you so much. Hello everyone. So in this video, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to create a simple simple Flask form, not form itself, not the form HTML element, but rather a simple HTML kind of structure which allow users to kind of input anything. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll rename this page as Wikipedia search, and in here what I can do is I can create some sort of div. So what I'll do is I'll create a div, top level div, and inside this I'll create an inside div, and then there will be one more div, and I'll let you know why I'm creating these divs. I'll create one more div. Okay, so I have got these three divs. So the first top level div will be holding my h2, that is the title name, which is going to be Wikipedia search, maybe on 200k articles. Okay, so this will be h2, and then this top div will also hold one input, and this input will be inside another div. Now this input will be of type text, and the name of this input, I'll just omit name for now, and for ID I can keep search query for now, and I can also have placeholder which is start typing start typing to search maybe. So we have this input, and we can have maybe some sort of classes here, form control, although they are not necessary at this point. So I think this minimal step is good. And now why this middle div? Let me put the ID of result list. Why? Because maybe I'll use it to display the results, and this last div will hold the button. Okay, and button, although at this point it's not required, show more, we can probably have this, but let's just have this setup where we are having this result list, input, and this. Okay, so I hope it makes sense. So let me now reload the app. So we have this article, and it's saying start typing to search. Currently we will type, but nothing will happen because we did not implement the logic inside the web app. Currently we just have this static template where which basically what it is doing is it is just having a h2 tag and a div tag. Now in the next video what I'll do is I'll try to basically modify this this whole setup to look a bit professional by including something known as Bootstrap. Although you don't need to worry about it because you will find these codes in the description. You can just copy paste it. But if any of you want to stay, they can probably stay to look at how to add Bootstrap to make it look a bit cleaner. Thank you so much. Hello everyone. So in this video we are going to look at how to add Bootstrap styling to make your front end look a bit more cleaner. Okay, so now to be able to do that, let me go to Bootstrap CDN link. So I just want to find that link and simply copy paste it within our so I want to find this link, which is this one. So I'll what I'll do is I'll copy this, although this whole thing is not required, but let's copy it anyway. Okay, and inside this I can paste it right here. Okay, now what I can do is for each of these divs I can provide classes which are provided by Bootstrap. For example, I can provide the class of BG light, background light means, and let's reload the app and let's see what does it change. So currently it's white, but if I reload it, you can see immediately something changed. Okay, now what I'll do is for the top level div, I'll define a class of container, and padding of y will be, let's give it a padding of y of 5, and let's reload it. Okay, so we can clearly see something is happening inside this div, the div which holds the input. Or maybe what I can do is I can probably bring it outside this. Okay, let's reload it. Okay, no effect. Now give some classes to h2. So maybe I want to center it, so I'll do text center, and let's reload it. So we have the text as centered. Next I want to maybe give some sort of margins, and I think that would be it for h2. And maybe for div, the down div, I want to give a class of margin of 3, I guess. That looks good. Okay, finally let's give the input type text a class of form control, and if I reload it, you can clearly see immediately it is starting to look professional, right? Okay, so finally for the result list, I will give it a class of row and gy of 3. So all these class have different meanings, but currently this result list is not populated, so we won't be seeing anything at this point. And once we implement the logic of that, we will be able to see. So we have implemented successfully the Bootstrap functionality. Now when I type, nothing is happening because we still did not implement, haven't implemented the logic of searching within the app. Okay, so we will do that in the next video. Thank you so much. Have a nice day. Hello everyone. So I'm creating this quick video. It will be a kind of suggestion for you, and the suggestion is that the next video is going to be a involved one where we are going to be using JavaScript, and in the course description of this course I mentioned that JavaScript is not a requirement. So this is why what I wanted to suggest here is that you need not watch this video because that involves something which is known as JavaScript Ajax programming. But if you are comfortable with that, then you can continue with this video. Although most of the stuff that we need to do to create a Wikipedia search engine, we have already done so far. So yeah, so this is why I wanted to quickly record this video. So it is an optional video. If you want, you can watch it, but don't take a load that if you don't understand it. Okay, thank you so much. Hello everyone, so welcome to this last video in this entire series, and in this particular video we are going to put together everything that we have done so far to create the final web application. So currently we have this. Okay, this is broken. One second. Currently we have this application which is not doing anything, right? Okay, so how do I make it do something? First of all, I want to take your attention to that function which we created in this train and save and yeah, inference notebook. So let me do one thing. Let me open Jupyter notebook really quickly, or maybe I think I can open it within the Visual Studio also. So okay, so this is the notebook. So let me copy this entire code and let me paste it in the app. So when the app loads, I would want to load the models as well. So I will load these, and since these does not exist, it will throw an error currently, and I would like to load these as well. So this generate results will return 10 documents, 10 top documents. Okay, if I save it, it will break the server. Let me save it, and now the server is broken, right? Because file is not found. To be able to make sure that files are found, what I'll do is I'll copy these models that we had in the Flask search app. So if I copy it, now they are present, and now if I let me close out this, and now if I reload the app, cd, one second, I think one second, I need to again search. What was the virtual environment name? tfidf search, tfidf search scripts, activate, and then cd Flask search app, and finally python app.py. Now it should load the app correctly without any error. Okay, so we have the apps ready. Okay, so what else needs to be done? We already have a home route setup within the application. I need to set up a search route. Let's do that really quickly. App.route, and this search route, what it would do is it would expect a query to be received within the URL. So we need to parse the query. So for that, from the Flask we can import request as well, and from request.args.get, I need to just get the query, and if it is not found, I'll return an empty string. And once I have that, I will get a results by calling this generate results and passing the query. And if I have the results, and once I have that, I can import JSONify as well, and I will return JSONify. This will be basically having a results dictionary, results key, and it will have all results. Okay, so let's see if our app is broken or not. Yeah, it is working so far. So now what? Now we need to utilize it somehow. How can we utilize it? So to use these once again, let me close out this window. So to use this search route, what I need to do is, so we already set up our index.html. We already have this results list. What I would want to do is, I want to set up a script. Now this script is going to be a JavaScript script. So for that, let's create a new directory, which is going to be static, and within this I'll create a new file called script.js. Don't worry about it if you don't understand it. Just skip this part and copy paste the code that I'll provide. Okay, so what I want to do is, within this script I will write some define some function. Okay, so I have this input as search query, right? So I can access this element as search query. So I'll define document dot get element by id, and let me grab this search query. Okay, so once I have this search query, I want to add a event listener. So this event listener I want to add is called key up. The idea is that the moment I enter something, I want to fire up this function, and this the moment I do this, what I want to do is I want to so essentially the idea is that I don't want user to enter any button. If I had created a system where I had a button to show the results, it would have been easy. But the way I want to do is I want to do it as I am typing. Okay, so I will be calling this functionality after every maybe some seconds, right? So now what I can do is I can define some constants, maybe current query. So current query, let's say empty string. Let define one more variable, which is debounce timeout, which is going to be null currently. So what I want to do in this function is, first of all, I want to clear any previous timeouts that have happened. So I would like to debounce timeout the previous one, and I would like to create a new debounce timeout, which is going to be set timeout, and this set timeout is going to be a function. I'm utilizing a arrow functionality here. The current query is going to be this dot value, and why I'm using this, because I'm calling this function. So I'm inside this function. Now this function handler is called on search query, so whatever that element is, I'm calling out that value. Okay, after calling this value, I want to take my document and get element by id, and this time I will call this results list. Okay, so I will call this results list and I'll empty it first. I'm just taking my results list and I'm emptying it. And what will I do next? I'll call one more function which is called load. Sorry, and this load function I have not defined it yet. So what I'll do is I'll define the load function here. Function, currently it is not defined. I'll define it in a moment. And now I need to define after how much time I will be calling this function. I'll be calling this function after every 0.3 milliseconds. Okay, so after every 0.3 milliseconds it is going to check the value, and it is going to call this functionality. Now within this load function, I would like to see if my current query is empty. If my current query is empty, one second, if my current query is empty, then what I'll do is I'll grab my results list. Okay, sorry, I think I should have done inner HTML here. Inner HTML. So I'll grab this entire code as it is and I'll paste it here. Okay, so it means that I don't want to, whenever my whenever my current query is empty, I don't want to do anything else, and I just want to return from this function. So you see this loop. So it will be called after every 0.3 millisecond, and if the current query is empty, it will just return from this function. And then the moment key up happens, clear timeout is going to clear the previously defined debounce timeout. Okay, so I hope it is making sense now. After that I would like to utilize a fetch functionality. Within this fetch, I can use this backticks to call the search function, and query is equal to, what will be my query? The query will be the current query. So I would like to do encode URI, and in encode URI I'll write current query. So I would like to fetch this, and now we can do then on the results of whatever fetch returns. So I'll do then, and then I would like to get my result and return it as result.json. Now what will it return? Now go to the app search returns a JSON with a results key, right? So finally what I'll do is I'll call one more then, and inside this then what I'll do is I'll call this data and open a curly braces. Okay, and inside this I'll define a new variable called list. Now what is going to be my list here? The list will be document.getElementById, and the list will be this results list. And within this list what I want to do is I want to do data. Now data is what? Data came from previous result.json, and this JSON has a key called results. Okay, so now we can access that result. Data.results dot for each. Currently, just for the sake of it, I want to show you something. So what I'll do is for each item index. So item will be the actual document and index will be the index of it. I'll open a one more function, and this time let's create a new element. So maybe h1 element, or maybe let's create h3 element. Document dot create element, and this time I'll create a h3 element. Now h3 dot inner text, or maybe inner HTML, whatever you can use it. Inside here I would like to use item as it is. Notice the item is going to be what? Item is going to be coming from here, these top docs. Though item will be the first 100 characters of the top documents. Now let's test out this functionality. Okay, let's see. But no, I think before this h3, what I want to do is I want to do list dot append child. So after doing this I would like to do list dot append child, and I would like to do append h3. And finally I think once I have this this list, I think this list is what? Document dot this, but this has to be updated somewhere, right? So list is there, document dot, and I have appended the child. I think this should work, right? Let's reload it, the app, and let's open the server also, so that we clearly see what's happening. Let's type out something. Hi. Nothing is happening. Why? Okay, did we include the script? We did not include the script. So let's include the script here, and let's add source, static, and script.js. Now let's reload it, or maybe add Robert. Okay, so we are getting something. Obviously some error is happening, but let's see why this error is coming out. So we are calling get query Robert, and it's calling it's returning 404, which means no, not found. Okay, and if I go inside the app, we clearly have a route, app.search. We clearly have a route, app.search, and inside here, why it's not being called here? Okay, SE, did I spell it correctly? SERC, one second. Okay, spelling is correct. So why it is not being called? Search. Okay, I think this encode URI should have been encode URI component, I guess. but I don't think that explains the error that we were getting. Still it is not working. Why? Let's see. Let me debug it. I'll get back to it. Okay. Okay, I solved the issue. The problem was because we need to pass it like this. Okay, so let's test it out now. Let's do Robert. Okay, so we are getting something, right? Okay, so now the only thing that we need to do is we need to clean it somehow. Okay, so we are getting those results. So how are we going to clean it? So to clean it, it's just the matter of uh, putting it putting some uh, bootstrap tags, bootstrap classes. So let me recreate this entire thing. So what I'll do, let's keep it like this, and let's get rid of these things. Now that we know that the entire logic is working, we can work on the aesthetics. So what I'll do is I'll create a column variable, document dot create element, and this column variable I'll call as div, and column dot class name would be call 12. And remember, these are bootstrap classes. So call dot inner HTML I'll define, and inside inner HTML I'll call a backtick, and inside backtick I can easily write my HTMLs. Okay, so I'll create a tag. Okay, and this a tag would be, and I think a tag is a self-closing tag, so I'll put everything inside a tag so that this would be a clickable thing, and these are not going to be taking the user anywhere else but except the on the page. So that's why I'm putting href to be hash, and the class would be text decoration none, and also this call should be appended to the list. Okay, so list dot append child call. Okay, so now let's write out the remaining HTML. Inside here I would like to have one more div, and this div would be having class. Now this is where magic is going to happen. Shadow sm border 0. So this will be a top level card class, and card is a popular bootstrap class. Now this card will have a h5. This h5 will have class is equal to card title. Okay, and here the actual text would be, so the item, so I'll take maybe first 10 letters from, maybe not first 10, first 20 letters from the item. Maybe I will do dot splice. Start number would be 0 and 20, right? And finally I'll create a paragraph tag, and this paragraph tag will have class card text. So these are self-explanatory. I'll copy this entire thing, and here I'll just put item as it is. Nothing needs to be modified. Okay, so now I have a nice looking this card tag, and once we loop through this entire thing and we append to it, it will automatically be appended. Okay, so we have this a, we have this div, and inside here we have h5, and we have this div, and yeah, so this is how it is looking like. Now what we can do is we can, I think we need to do one more thing. We can wrap this entire thing into another div, and this div we can give a class of card body. Okay, so I think now it's looking good. but let's test it out whether it is doing what it is supposed to do. So let's zoom out a little bit and let's do Robert, and this time it's not working, something broke probably. Let's load our inspect panel. Okay, so it's saying item.splice is not a function. Okay, let's do one thing. Item, let's test something out here. If I have a string, maybe hi, my name is dots. Okay, so let me do const h. Now h, if I have to slice, oh, slice is the function 110. Okay, so slice should be used. Slice, item dot slice. Let's now reload it and let's say Robert. Okay, so we can clearly see now it is looking something like our application, although so we have this title and we have we can clearly see the title is only the first 20 how many, yeah, first 20 characters, and the whole paragraph is, so it is clickable right now, although we can't click it. Why? Because we have put a hash in front of it. So yeah, so this is how it's looking like. Why text decoration? So we did text decoration none, still it is doing some sort of text decoration, but overall it is looking correct. So Einstein, okay, yeah. So we can also do something like I don't know, maybe we can change the class name to card is okay, shadow sm, card body is looking good, card title is looking good, class, and if I do a is April. Okay, all right, I think this is looking good, and we can probably work more on it, on its aesthetics and design, but I think overall I am satisfied with the results. Okay, so now if I try to search something else, maybe s I sin, yeah, okay, okay, that works. So I think that would be it. What I would do is for you is I would provide you the entire code which you can just take and utilize as it is in your project. So yeah, thank you so much for watching this course. Let me know what could be improved and what could possibly be enhanced, or what you liked and what you didn't like, so that going forward I can work on those things. Thank you so much. Okay, so here what I have tried to do is I have tried to fix those issues which we were facing earlier with the bootstrap class not working. So the reason that I did it not live, because it was taking some time, some debugging, so that's why I did it. What I'll do is I'll provide you with the codes. So essentially what you want to do is you want to copy the templates that I'll be providing you, the index.html and the script.js files. So you just need to copy the code that is there within these files, and rest is same. So if I look at, let me open this in Visual Studio Code really quickly. So in Visual Studio Code, if I just open the app.py, so you can see it's entirely same. I did not change anything at all. But in the index.html, this was our earlier code which I was writing within the video, and this is a new code which I fixed. And then similarly with script.js, this was our earlier code and this is the new code. So what I'll do is I'll provide you with this code, and rest of the process of getting this search system working is going to be same. Okay, so I hope it makes sense, and yeah,
That's it on in this video. Thank you so much.